Hello and welcome back to Classic Vinyl Podcast and our second episode, side 2 of The Doors and the Soft Parade album. I'm Justin, one of your hosts. I'm here with Tyler.
Yep, I am still here.
And our guest host, Austin.
Hey.
So we're going to get to the second side 2 of The Doors Soft Parade. You ready to get to it, boys?
Yep.
Side 2.
Okay, so side 2 kicks off with Wild Child. This is a song written and sang by Jim Morrison. Once again, you've got Doug Lubon on bass guitar. This is another song that is a very stark contrast from the rest of the album, mostly because it's another Morrison composition. I kind of put this in line with Shaman's Blues. You know, it really harkens back to their earlier albums, like a couple of his songs on here do. Now, the lyrics Morrison's written here explain a free spirit who is a savior of the human race. They filmed a music video for this, which is kind of interesting if you get a chance to look it up on YouTube or something. It was actually not released until 1985 on their documentary Dance on Fire, but it's pretty cool. I bought that when I was younger, and I had a bunch of their music videos on it. It was really neat. Now, this song does end with Remember When We Were in Africa. Now, a lot of people said that's possibly a reference to Morrison's infatuation at the time with the French poet Arthur Rimbaud, and the fact that Morrison had said he was going to run away and live in Africa among the natives. And maybe that's what he did. We're not quite sure. But after listening to Wild Child, Austin, what are your thoughts on this song?
I agree with what you said. I think it's a very classic Doors song. I really enjoy this one. This is definitely one of the stronger ones on the album for me. I do like the very strong bass line through the song, and then I also like the twangy guitar. This really is a great showcase of Robbie Krieger's guitar skills. I think that's one thing that on this album, maybe he doesn't get enough credit for because it's overpowered by horns or saxophones or whatever that may be. But I think this is a great showcase and overall a great song. What do you think, Tyler?
Sounds of Africa, man. It was just overpowering Robbie Krieger. But you know what? I'm really curious. Have we checked out all of the indigenous tribes in Africa to see if
Jim Morrison's there?
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty big country, and my thought on that is, honestly, if he had done something like that, I think he would have resurfaced by now. I think he had too big of an ego to be out of the spotlight that long.
Yeah, well, I mean, it seems like every celebrity that spends time going back to Africa or, spends time with their roots there, they still resurface. Dave Chappelle did it, and a couple of other celebrities have done so as well. This was another song my first time listening to, and I love this song. It's all about me. This is about a disowned child, a terrible child. I could tell that this was Morrison. It really has that Morrison feel to it. However, unlike the Shaman Blues, I really enjoyed this song. I really got in there with it and had a good time listening to it. And I appreciate what the man's saying. And what are your thoughts on that, Justin?
This is a good song. This has always been one of my, it's in my top tier of Doors songs and definitely one of my favorite songs on the album. I really love the guitar intro. It's one of the guitar licks I learned early on. I'll play it over and over and over. It's got great bass in it. The drumming is perfect on this thing. I think it's to a T perfect. In the drum, there's little sections of the guitar and the drums that come after the verses that I really like. This is just a good all-around rock and roll song. Perfect example of when Morrison can kind of sing about something strange and you maybe don't need to decipher the lyrics too much, but it's got good music to it and it rocks out. This is just atypical Doors to me. That moves us on to a song I don't find as atypical Doors, Runnin' Blue. Now, this was written by Morrison, and vocals on this are actually shared by Morrison, and you've got Robbie Krieger singing on this one a little bit, too. He sings the part where he says, all right, look at my shoes, that part. But this is the shortest song on the album at just under 2.5 minutes. This was the fourth of 4 singles released off of the album. It peaked at number 64 in the U.S. charts. The B-side to this single was this other song on this album, Do It. Harvey Brooks on this one, once again, playing bass guitar. Now, this song apparently was inspired to Morrison by the death of Otis Redding, who, Morrison idolized him. He was into Otis Redding, Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra, all those crooners in a way, which is his voice kind of a little bit like. And it's loosely based off of a Lead Belly song titled Poor Howard. What are your thoughts on Runnin' Blue, Austin?
I think first off, you can't mention this song without mentioning what you said with the little pop-in of the vocals of Krieger.
Yeah.
I think that's a great part of it. I think he may not have the most typical singer vocals, especially for the time, but I think he has an interesting voice that adds to the song, and it just kind of makes you look up and think, what? What did I just hear?
Well, if you listen to the Two Doors albums they recorded after Morrison was gone, and Robbie's got some vocals on those, they're much stronger. And he's not a bad singer. He's not what you would call a atypical frontman by any means, but he's not a bad singer. And this was kind of the first time he really had anything on an album with the Doors.
Yeah, interesting addition to the song, but I do like it, and I do agree with you. His later vocals, he is a great singer. But as for this song, I did enjoy the violin with it, and then I also enjoyed the horns again. It almost sounded like they were kind of like stepping with the horns and the violin at some point, kind of like stepping up and down. And I love the sound of it, and great short song. What do you think, Tyler?
This song had a very different sound and tune to the rest of the album. It just didn't really match up to any of the other songs on it, and even the blues song. So this one was a little bit of a shock to me, but it was well done. Really good song, and I think a very appropriate tribute to the late Otis Redding. If that's what it was intended to be, it was very successful. The violins at the end, I think Justin pointed out, it sounds like like Charlie Daniels. I'm like, yeah, it does sound like Charlie Daniels. And that's what I mean when I'm like, yeah, this doesn't sound at all like the rest of the album. It's almost country with it's so heavily blues. Decent song. What are your thoughts on this one, Justin?
Well, it starts off, poor Otis dead and gone. Let me hear to sing this song.
Oh, so it's definitely a tribute then.
Yeah, pretty little girl with a red dress on. So Jim takes it somewhere else. But I like the guitar lick to start the music on the song. This song does go back to some horns and strings, which I really don't enjoy on this, because we did listen to part of this song. We listened to this song off the 50th anniversary too, Strip. To me, it's a much stronger song that way, because you've got the bass turned up on it and it's just more raw. But that's easy to say 55 years on, right? Because at the time they were trying to do something different than what they had been doing. And bands get criticized for every album sounds the same. You can tell that's the Doors or whatever band it is. And then they put something out that's completely different. And everybody's like, well, that's not the sound you need, So, I mean, that's one of the things why I think it was kind of popular with fans and unpopular with fans, is you've got both of those. It's an okay song. I like it better stripped. The vocals are great in this from Morrison, I think, and I like the words in it, but they don't seem to fit the song musical structure to me. But it's a good song. So that moves us on to Wishful Sinful. This was another song written by Robbie Krieger and, of course, sang by Jim Morrison. You've got Doug Lubon on bass guitar again, but that has been, a lot of people think it might have been Harvey Brooks, and I don't know for sure. But either way, there's someone playing bass on this. Now, this was the second single released off the album. The B-side of this was a song called Who Scared You, which we actually have an episode on that earlier, so go check it out. It was a song that never made it to an album. It was just a B-side single. This did reach number 44 on the Billboard charts. And as far as what this song's about, it's Robbie Krieger, and I think it's Robbie Krieger trying to write kind of like Morrison, mysterious, could be profound and about the mysterious depths of the subconscious mind, or possibly it could simply be about a girl, and he's using words to cover that. Who knows? But even though it was written by Krieger, like I said, the lyrics are very Morrison-esque. What are your thoughts on Wishful Sinful, Austin?
Even though, like you said, the lyrics are very Morrison-esque, I think that this really does showcase Robbie Krieger's writing skills, and I think sometimes his underrated writing skills. I think this song has a great bass line, great guitar. Honestly, every instrument in it is great and works together well. It starts off just very peaceful. It's just overall a great song. You never know where it's going to take you, and probably one of my favorites on the album as well. What do you think, Tyler? What do you think about Wishful Sinful?
If there was a third song on this album that I thought I heard before, it's this one. And the reason why I thought I had heard this one before, but in fact I haven't, this is my first time listening to this particular song. The reason why I thought I'd heard it before is because it has the same beat as some more popular Doors songs that I have heard on the radio.
Let's be honest. You spent a lot of time in my office when we worked together. I guarantee you've heard every one of these songs at one point or another in the background.
Oh, probably. But this one, it's got boom, 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 right? That's a very typical beat that you hear in some of the Doors' popular songs that get a lot of radio play. Hence, I thought I'd heard this one before. Haven't heard it before, except for In Your Office. This song's got some really interesting little key changes or note step downs that they do, especially towards the end. It starts to step down into flats, and it just bends the noise, and it makes it kind of weird. However, then the strings come in as well at the end, and it makes it like this super sweet, and it's not even sweet and sour. It's like sweet and dark is what it is. It's really strange. My head didn't really enjoy it that much listening to it, but I'm not going to write the song off completely. It's just not one of my favorites on the album that we've been listening to. What are your thoughts on this one, Justin?
So Wishful Sinful, I've always enjoyed this song. It's one of my favorite on the album, and I'm pretty sure it's probably my favorite Robbie Krieger written song. And maybe that's because to me it seems like his attempt to be more Morrison-like in the vocals and not be so straightforward about I love you, girl, or whatever it's going to be. There's just a lot of things in it, you know. I love the soulness of the song on the opening. The Jim Morrison vocals on this song fit perfect. And this is the only song on the album, in my opinion, that the strings and brass fit into perfectly and do justice to. Okay, so I also think the drumming on this song is perfect. You really need to listen to Densmore on this song. I think it's perfect. This is a really good song all around, and I really enjoy it. It's one of my favorites. So that moves us to the last song on the album, the title song, The Soft Parade. Another song written and sang by Jim Morrison. You've got Harvey Brooks on bass guitar once again. This is the longest song on the album, just under 9 minutes. This is pieced together from many of Morrison's poems, and that's why you get kind of the tale of 4 songs in this thing. It's definitely a 4-piece song. It's a varied song. It's abstract song that the title was a phrase that was actually coined by Jim Morrison. It is about a search for sanctuary, escape, and pleasure from the varied people in Los Angeles, the very strange people in Los Angeles. He came up with the phrase to describe the strange and diverse people who lived on the Sunset Boulevard that he would always see passing by when he was there. So that's where the Soft Parade come from. Austin, what are your thoughts on the title song, The Soft Parade?
What a great way to end the album. You can't have the Soft Parade without the Soft Parade, right? Definitely have to have that.
Well, they did release Waiting for the Sun without Waiting for the Sun, so.
True.
Well, in this case, I think this song definitely, you have to have it to close out the album. Tying in, I feel like what sounds like every single instrument that they have used in this whole album, it ties it all together. It's a slow start and progresses. It's almost like a roller coaster of a song. I think you hear so many different aspects of Morrison's, not only just lyrics, but vocals, his actual voice. Another great thing is you're progressing through the different parts or pieces of the song. There's always just a nice clean bass line or keyboard kind of ushering you through to the next part of the song. Just a great way to end the album. I mean, as soon as that needle lifts, you're like, wow, that was the Soft Parade. What did you think, Tyler?
You really summed it all up there, Austin. This was a wild ride of so many varied sounds and rhythms and beats. It jumps all over the place. It really does sound like 4 songs in one. And yet they're all the Soft Parade, the final song on the album. This could have been, 3 or 4 songs on the tail end. Instead of 9, we'd be listening to 12. That being said, it was a fun ride. Austin was absolutely right. It was like a showcase of everything that they'd done on this album so far. It tied it all together, wrapped it up nicely, and it felt a lot like you're listening to a recital of beatnik poetry. I had a good time with it. I enjoyed it, and this is my favorite song on the album just because of the opening line, the opening introduction.
But you cannot petition the Lord with prayer.
You cannot petition the Lord with prayer. What are your thoughts on this one, Justin?
Well, that's why this album is kind of confusing for me, and it always has been in a way. It probably has 2 or 3 of my least favorite Doors songs in their whole catalog on it. It probably has 2 or 3 of my most favorite Doors songs in their catalog on it. So this album is kind of mixed. Now, this song, like I said, is a tale of 4 songs. It's got 4 different songs on it, and you're right. They could have turned those into 4 separate songs if they really wanted. And the part I like the best is the beginning. Simple guitar beginning. I love when the music first starts up until, the part that says the man is at the door. You can tell these are Morrison poems, lyrics. You've got peppermint miniskirts, chocolate candy, champion sax, and a girl named Sandy. It's just, he's got all those, and they fit so well. He's an excellent writer, even if it's gibberish bullshit. can mean something to someone, right?
Yeah.
This song has got great bass in it, starting with the third section of the song. I think the best bass in the whole album. That starts when he starts Catacombs section, and the bass throughout the rest of the song is amazing in it. The drumming, I think this has the best drumming in the whole album on it as well. It's got great organ in it, and that's something I haven't really talked about. Probably gets dismissed a little bit from Ray, because that is the Doors sound, that organ, that haunting organ. And it's throughout these. Even a few of these songs you couldn't really hear it on. When we listen to the 50th anniversary stripped down, minus horns and orchestration, you can hear the organ. And Austin even made the comment, it's almost like it's not stripped down, because the organ still kind of has that feel of orchestration, and it really does. And I think that's one sad thing about some of the songs on this, is that orchestration drowns out Ray, Robbie, and John. These songs are much stronger, in my opinion. Let It Be was a good example for the Beatles, that Phil Spector did his wall of sound on and put the symphony to and orchestration to, and then when they released Let It Be Naked, it was a great album. I'd like to see him do that with this, release it remixed. But yeah, The Soft Parade is a great song. It's always been one of my favorite Doors songs, and Austin said it. Great way to end the album. So do you guys want to get to winners and losers?
I do.
Yep.
Winners and losers.
Okay, so we've listened to Soft Parade, side 1 and side 2. We'll go to Austin first. What are your 2 or 3 losers on this album?
For losers, I have a couple losers. I would say Do It and Easy Ride. The reason why is, like, they're both great songs. They're definitely ones that I wouldn't skip. I don't think there's a lot of Doors songs that I skip. But for me, they just feel almost a little out of place on the album. Just not as strong lyrically and instrumentally as some of the other ones for me. Again, they're not bad songs. They're just probably 2 of my least favorite on the album. What about you, Tyler?
I'm a little bit more than just 2. I have 3. Didn't really dig Shaman's Blues. It was my least favorite. It's just I didn't dig the style of the song very much. So another one was Runnin' Blue. It was just an odd style for the album, I thought. And other than that, it was a nice song. Didn't really fit the album, in my opinion. And then Wishful Sinful just had the odd sounds. That's why I didn't really dig that one. Justin, do you have any losers on this one?
Yeah, I mean, if I was to pick 3 losers, I would say Do It, Easy Ride, and Runnin' Blue. Those songs, to me, they're good songs. They're not skippers for me, but they certainly are album filler. But, I mean, there was a point in time where the Doors were my favorite band, even more so than the Beatles that I always talk about. But I think those songs, for me, they're the weakest on the album, and I could live without them. So, yeah. So as far as winners, Austin, what would you say your favorite songs on this album are? You can, in order, however you'd like to do it.
Yeah, so I'd say my first one would probably be Wild Child. I think it's just very classic Doors, but it also still kind of fits with the album. I really like the bass line in that song, and the kind of twangy guitar, I think is how I described it. Overall, that's a really great song. I don't feel like it's one of just the filler songs. And then I would say that one of my other ones is Shaman's Blues. That one as well has great bass the whole song. I think that being the 3rd song on the album, it's a great intro to Jim Morrison's writing. Some great keyboard organ stuff by Ray. And it just feels like the Doors, especially the early Doors. Good transition from the first 2 songs on the album that don't necessarily feel like the traditional Doors. For my last one, I would say The Soft Parade. Just kind of echoing what I said before about the song. I think it's just a great way to end the album. It's just a journey. It takes you through several different songs. You get to hear a ton of different sides of Jim Morrison's lyrics and voice, and it's overall just a great way to end the album. So that would probably be my favorite out of all the songs on the album, which is interesting because I feel like it's very split with a lot of people on that song specifically. So what about you, Tyler?
You know what, Austin? I'm 2 for 3 with you there. I really liked Wild Child. Soft Parade's my favorite. The other one that I was kind of surprised is the one that I've heard so many times over the radio, and yet this is the first time I've sat to listen to it critically, and it surprised me how much I loved and enjoyed the message of the song. Touch Me. And that one just keeps me thinking, okay, if you had substituted Hit Me instead of Touch Me, how different of a song would it be? And yet it's beautiful either way to me, in my mind. And that's something that I really appreciate about that song. It was really, for something that I'd heard, several times, it was like listening to it for the first time, and I really enjoyed that. Justin, where are your winners?
Well, I'll give them to you in order. So I've got two tied for my third favorite song, and that's going to be Wild Child and Wishful Sinful. So I've actually got two on this, just as Austin did. It's funny because he had Wishful Sinful and Shaman's Blues as his favorites. They were on your least favorites. But Wishful Sinful and Wild Child, I would tie for third. Number two, I'd almost have to tie Shaman's Blues and Soft Parade for 1 and 2. I love those songs. Probably Shaman's Blues eases it out a little for me. I would say that's probably my favorite song on the album. So it did kind of surprise me that you didn't like it, but you've listened to it a total of once.
Yes.
I've listened to it hundreds, if not thousands of times. I love the song. It's what kind of, this album's kind of a yin and yang and a ping and a pong or whatever you want to call it, because you start heavy with symphony and orchestration and strings, and then you do that the first two songs, and then you're back to Jim Morrison style songs with Shaman's Blues, and then you go kind of crazy with Do It and Easy Ride, but then you get back into Wild Child and then Wishful Sinful, which is Robbie's, but it sounds Morrison-esque, and then you end it off with the Soft Parade. It's a very different album, but I think true Doors fans really enjoy the album, and most of them hold it up there high. Some don't, though. I mean, I kind of get why they don't. It's going to be a hard rate for me because there's times it's one of my favorite albums and there's times it isn't. It's just a situational album for me and what mood I'm in.
I think you're going to find it interesting what I have to say when we get into rating it.
Well, should we get to rating it?
Let's do.
Album rating.
Okay, if this is your first time listening, we have a pretty simple rating scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the best and 5 being smack in the middle. That being said, who wants to go first? Should we have Austin, our guest host, go first?
Let's do it.
So this album, it's an interesting one. I feel like for a lot of Doors fans, they don't really like this one. It's a lot of people's least favorite. And I think it's a lot of people's favorites. And then I think there's a lot of people who are very in the middle about it. For me, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would probably rate this an 8. I think it's a great album. I think it's a great showcase of what the Doors are capable of, not just instrumentally, but lyrically and vocally. And I just think it's got a lot of treats in there. You really are taken for a ride throughout the whole album. You start off slow and you go through all these different kinds of songs and waves and just end with the Soft Parade. And it's honestly just a great album. What do you think, Tyler?
So I'm right on with you at 8. And here's what I have to say about that. My gut reaction was, I don't want to rate this album this high. I want to knock it down by at least a point, maybe 2 points. My gut reaction was a 6 or a 7. But I thought, no, this album has enough meat in it that I really want to dig in there and pull it apart and listen to it over and over and over again. And I really feel like if I do give this more and more future listenings, that my esteem of this album will raise up to meet that 8, maybe even exceed it, because that's something that's so cool about the Doors is especially Jim Morrison, is he's a real difficult guy to really wrap your head around. And yet, is he? And we don't really know. And that's what's so wonderful about it, is the mystery of that. I'm rating this a little bit higher than I would for the very reason that I can see its potential. I can see that when we sit down and listen to Shaman's Blues again, I'm going to be on you guys' side. I'm wrong and you guys are right. That will end up being one of my favorite songs. But my first time listening to it, I didn't get it, and therefore it's one of my least favorites. I'm amazed I'm right on par with you, Austin. This is an 8, regardless of what my gut initially told me. So where do you put this one, Justin?
You know, I think most serious Doors fans will understand that this is just part of their catalog. I mean, they've got 6 albums, 4 years. They crank these things out. And I think when I was talking earlier that it's situational, you know, sometimes you're in the mood for the debut album, Strange Days. Sometimes you want to go heavier blues stuff that the Doors do, which they really got into that in Morrison Hotel and especially in LA Woman. This is just one chapter. The funny thing is it's, and I stated this earlier, it's got 3 or 4 songs that are some of my least favorite Doors songs on it, but it's got 3 or 4 songs that are some of my favorite Doors songs that are probably in my top 10 Doors songs, so it's really hard to rate. I think I can give it an 8.5 for the time being because I really enjoy the album, and they're, like I said, they're all 6 Doors albums. There's not a skipper for me on any of them. In fact, if there is, it would probably be Light My Fire, Hello, I Love You, and Touch Me, just simply because of the radio overplay. You know, I want to hear the album stuff. But I rate this 8.5. I think if I was to put a 6-song album together, it would be a glowing 10 for me. Those 3 songs, if I'm going to be truthful and rate it as an album, do bring it down for me. But there's days it's my favorite Doors albums, and then the next day it's towards the bottom. So I'm all over the place with it, but it definitely belongs, and I wouldn't want to go without it.
For sure.
So that's the Doors, and that's the Soft Parade. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or want us to rate any songs or albums, please send us some suggestions at classicvinylpodcast@gmail.com. We really do appreciate you listening to us, because we know there's a lot of podcasts out there you could be listening to. And so if you're listening to ours and a few guys that don't really know what they're talking about but enjoy doing it, we appreciate it.
I like songs.
Yeah. Well, until next time, we'll see you later.
See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to Classic Vinyl Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Classic Vinyl Podcast for updates, and also share us with your music-loving friends.